Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Fast Facts History, with today's video focusing on the Four Pests campaign, a really ineffective and catastrophic event in modern Chinese history that isn't talked about very much and worsened the economic standing of China. The Four Pests campaign was a 1958 sub-event of the Great Leap Forward, which I will briefly go over a little bit later. In this campaign, Chairman Mao Zedong sought to eliminate what he called the four pests: rats, sparrows, flies, and mosquitoes, who he thought spread infectious diseases across the country. The government ordered the murder of these pests in the millions, nearly causing these species to go extinct. However, the event failed horribly, and although succeeded in their goal of eradication, the government inadvertently caused a Great Chinese Famine. Without knowing the Great Leap Forward, we cannot talk about the Four Pests campaign. The Great Leap Forward, or a second five-year plan, was an initiative under Chairman Mao to reconstruct China into a communist society from an agrarian economy from 1958 to 1963. Mao attempted to increase grain yields and incorporate industry into the countryside, which ultimately failed. However, since people were so fearful, national officials often blamed bad weather for the decline in output, leaving almost 15 to 55 million people to die. In order to both decipher possibilities as to why so many were dying and why crop yields were not multiplying, Mao created the Four Pests campaign to attack the four pests he thought could be used as blame. Mosquitoes were responsible for spreading the deadly disease malaria, rodents who spread the classic plague, the pervasive and airborne flies that were always about, and finally sparrows who ate grain, seed, and fruit. These sparrows became the biggest targets of the campaign. The government called on citizens to target the four pests, kill them, or scare them into eventually dying out. They published posters advocating the need for fly swatters, drums, gongs, and guns as tools in the fight for improved public health, especially sparrows. Citizens were told to make noise with pots, pans, and drums in order to scare the sparrows and cause them to fall from the sky from exhaustion. Citizens tore apart nests, broke eggs, and killed fledglings. This was encouraged by the government, which awarded organizations that killed the most number of pets. Statistics show that almost 1.5 billion rats, 1 billion sparrows, 220 million pounds of flies, and 24 million pounds of mosquitoes were killed. In respect to killing in droves, the campaign succeeded heavily. However, a small highlight within the campaign involves the Polish embassy. Although the Chinese citizens and government had free rein to do what they pleased with sparrow within the country, they were unable to do so in that of others. As a result, sparrows were able to flee and find new homes in embassies in major cities such as Beijing and Shanghai. Among these embassies was the Polish embassy in Beijing, where many sparrows hid in the trees from the harassment of the Chinese people. After the government asked to enter the embassy to kill the sparrows, the embassy refused entry. Although the embassy attempted to protect the sparrows, people surrounded the embassy in numbers, sounded drums to scare the sparrows to their death, which succeeded. Although the campaign achieved its goal of sending pest populations to levels of extinction, it did not benefit the country in any way. Although it was unknown to the people, the sparrow was integral to crop protection. The sparrows ate many insects that were known to feed on crops, and an autopsy study showed that the sparrow diet was majorly composed of insects and not of grain as most thought. Among these insects were locusts, whose only natural predator was sparrows. Due to this imbalance, the locusts were able to swarm freely around the country, eating most of the crop yield. This resulted in a 15% drop in crop production by 1959, and this decline dropped all the way to 70% later on. The campaign led to the deaths of 20 to 43 million people on its own, an additional 15 to 36 million by the end of the famine. Production by 1959, and this decline dropped all the way to 70% later on. The campaign led to the deaths of 20 to 43 million people on its own, an additional 15 to 36 million by the end of the famine.